Scott Morrison lied to President Macron, either deliberately or through omission. Either way, trust between Australia and France has been broken, and Australia faces global scrutiny in the way it does business. So what must be done to repair trust between Australia, France and other nations?
Let's go around the room, shall we, for everyone on this one. Blair?
Well, I think Australia is facing a trust issue, not just on this, but on climate change. Our agreement before and arriving at Scotland was not seen as a
Let's stay with the question, though, which is about the relationship with France.
I really believe that the France situation and, arriving in Scotland, we aren't looking like a nation to be trusted, and we will have to work hard. And that will require us really to make commitments that are real, whether it's climate or whether it's agreements we're making with other countries in order to win that back.
Greg Sheridan?
So, Virginia, I don't think Morrison lied to Macron beyond conducting sensitive nuclear negotiations confidentially. A bit like when Henry Kissinger opened to China. He didn't tell everyone about it while he was having the sensitive talks with China. I don't think he told any specific lie to Macron. I think the great breach of protocol is Macron calling him a liar at an international conference. But the world is not actually that fussed about that. The French do that with all the Anglo-Saxons. I mean, the way they talk about Boris Johnson makes Scott Morrison look like their best friend. What I think is damaging to Australia's reputation, quite seriously, is inadvertent damage from President Joe Biden's comments, casting doubt on AUKUS, and secondly, just this look that our whole submarine saga is just the greatest fiasco. I've covered national security since since Malcolm Fraser, and in that time, the only Prime Minister who has commissioned a submarine which has come into existence is Bob Hawke. And I think we look ridiculous at that level.
We'll get to a little more on that, but I want to hear from Adam Bandt on that, because Greg Sheridan's saying there was no lie.
I think it has damaged our reputation, and I'd be inclined to believe President Macron over Scott Morrison, given his track record when it comes to the truth. I think there needs to be, we can get into the subs issue in a moment, and we've got a very clear position that we think this is a terrible move, but putting that to one side for a moment, I think now there needs to be an apology, and Scott Morrison needs to work together with President Macron and other EU leaders on climate, because this has damaged Australia's reputation. Countries are now saying at Glasgow, well, if you can't trust what Australia says, and if the Prime Minister is going to leak your text messages to the media when you're having discussions between heads of state, how can we trust them on climate? How can we trust them on other issues? And when we're facing such a global crisis, that's a terrible position to be in.
Matt Kean?
Virginia, I think the substantive decision was the right one in our national interest, but France is a long-term friend and ally of ours, and we needed to handle that decision in a respectful, honest and transparent way, and that clearly didn't happen. So I think our international reputation is damaged, and that relationship is too important for us not to work hard to repair it.
What do you think, Kavita?
I'm not concerned about reputations at all of either Australia or France. For me, any form of militarism and the billions and trillions that are being poured in that infrastructure by any of the developed countries is a huge problem, because that money can be better used to address climate change.
Let's get to that bigger issue, though, of the subs deal that we've signed on to here. 20 years before we get anything. And in the meantime, a clear signal also, really, when we think about it, to China that we are weak on defence, that we are without that for those 20 years before we get something in the water. There are many other clearly bigger mistakes in this issue that have been made. Greg Sheridan seems to indicate that too. Do you agree, Blair?
I think Australia really does have to worry about its reputation, and that the steps we take internationally are really important to that trust issue on all the issues of concern, and that in particular with submarines, you can't take it out of the equation of our region, China in particular, what that says in terms of siding with Biden, potentially going offside for France, and leaving us in a situation where we don't look like we are statesman-like internationally.
Greg mentioned Biden and America throwing us under the bus there, or indeed calling into question the AUKUS agreement. You organised for Joe Biden, so you have a personal commitment there,
as an intern at 12 years old. But he's a very honourable man. I think he's come in with a very strong agenda. He's achieved a lot in a very short time. He's got a lot more to do. But I think, it is important for Australia to build trust both with the US, China and France, and not to pick sides, and certainly not to play games. And I feel like it seems as if we're trying to play games and we're achieving nothing.
Greg, do you really think it doesn't matter that someone like has the standing of Emmanuel Macron out and out calls our Prime Minister a liar?
I think it does matter. I think it's very damaging for Macron's reputation. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to do, to go to an international conference.
That's a nice way to twist it, Greg Sheridan.
No, but to go to an international summit of leaders where you've lost a $90 billion contract and say, as a result, you know, this person who I thought I loved is now an unspeakable swine and a liar. And I've never discussed pineapples with him. And then the guy says, hey, but I've got a text that says you discussed pineapples with... But to be honest with you, Virginia, you know, I don't want to break any secrets here or disappoint anybody, but having done international journalism for 40 years, I find that governments leak on each other all the time.